Mr. Bean is one of the most unusual television shows ever made. The type of show that if someone said they didn't like it, you'd struggle to intellectually defend. What's it about? Oh, it's a series of sketches about a lonely man who actually might be an alien whose best friend is a teddy bear and he struggles to do basic everyday tasks. It's not just for kids, I swear. And yet for so many people around the world, this is compelling must-see TV, as there's nothing else quite like it. And although the sketches are well written, the show's success is undeniably centred around one man, Rowan Atkinson. Having begun developing the character all the way back as a student at Oxford, Rowan quickly discovered that he had a unique ability to comedically communicate using his body as an instrument. He could easily operate as a one-man show, captivating the audience with his ability to physically manifest virtually any idea. His skill set now feels like a lost art, like comparing modern art to the works of Da Vinci or Michelangelo. As although there are many hilarious comedic actors who deliver physically loud performances, no one can operate in Rowan's space, in which he essentially becomes a silent film star like Charlie Chaplin or Buster Keaton, bravely locking off the camera in one space and letting the performance speak for itself. Watching him perform is like listening to Beethoven or Mozart. It just feels right and naturally resonates with anyone who comes in contact with it.
The personality that you create in order to present visual comedy comes from very deep within you. It's very identifiable as a part of you.
Rowan attributes this ability to something he was born with, an instinct, that he doesn't analyse it in an academic sense or write theses about it. However, his colleague Angus Dayton insisted that despite how Atkinson's performance feels, when they toured the show live, nothing was improvised. Everything was planned meticulously and performed identically night after night.
He's very, very careful about everything he does. He works out everything in advance, and it'll be the same performance every night.
So Rowan is much more of a rehearsed actor than a comedian willing to discover new things in the moment. He even admits that he finds acting stressful and much prefers to plan and choreograph sketches than physically performing them. But what is it about this performance that transcends language and speaks to something universal in all of us? For me, there are 3 keys that made Rowan Atkinson so funny as Mr. Bean. Let's start with the 5 senses. Given that Mr. Bean is mostly a silent character, this means Rowan is tasked with making us identify with his humanity without using any words. And the way that he does that is essentially making Bean a vessel for experiencing the world around him through the same 5 senses we share: sight, smell, touch, taste, and sound. He reacts to everything around him in a hypersensitive manner, to the point that it's controlling him. And Rowan finds a way to physically act out what it's like to experience that sense, whether it's sight, smell, touch, taste, or sound, to its max, as if nothing else matters.
The expression, particularly with Mr. Bean, is so very, very important. It's sort of screaming at you, there may be no words, but you're being shouted at, I think, very loudly by the bodily expression.
This means that Rowan wields his body like a loud musical instrument. If he doesn't like the taste of something, then he's physically repulsed by it, and that repulsion overtakes his other senses to the point he has to block his eyes. If it hurts to touch his sore tooth, we get a large physical reaction by kicking his foot. Every part of the body is connected, and Rowan ensures he ties them together, so that if you touch a nerve in one spot, you get a reaction somewhere else. For example, when it comes to sound, if he can't sleep at night, then his ears are more sensitive to the more subtle noises going on around him, like his clock ticking. And Rowan shows us the clock ticking through these spasms and twitches in his eye. As a viewer, we can't see the clock face ticking, but we can hear it, and so can he. So his face becomes the face of the ticking clock. When he wants to have a relaxing picnic, his peace is disrupted by the sounds of a buzzing bee. Now there is no actual bee, but with just the sound effect and Rowan's masterful performance, we're fully hooked into the story of the bee because of his large, exaggerated movements. This is why Bean is comparable to silent film stars. The setting and props are basically irrelevant, as it feels like he's performing a one-man show on stage. In this case, the bee is non-existent, so he's communicating the entire story of where the bee is currently located with his physical reactions. First he's just hearing it, then it's in his mouth, and then it's in his trousers. This leads directly into the next key, embodying a feeling. Most actors find subtle ways of conveying what a character is feeling in a realistic way. They could be battling other conflicting emotions or hiding their feelings from other characters. This makes them feel like a real, relatable person, as we understand what makes them tick. However, Rowan is not trying to show us what we really look like when we experience something. He's trying to embody what we feel we look like. He's essentially becoming the feeling itself, and you relate to it because this is how you imagine you might come across when you're experiencing a powerful feeling or situation. But my favourite example is the way Rowan embodies fear. It's just impossibly funny. When he starts feeling scared watching a horror movie, the emotion hijacks his entire body in embarrassing fashion. He screams, holds his beating heart, then starts sinking into the chair like quicksand, which is physically showing us the feeling of fear deepening. Meanwhile, his hips are trembling, his hands are scrambling up and down his body like he's searching for answers, all the while his face conveys absolute terror, his eyes bulging more and more with each passing second. This is how it feels to be scared internally, being portrayed externally. And similar to the bee at the picnic scene, we never even have to see the movie. Rowan is communicating the story of the horror to us through his exaggerated reactions. We don't need close-ups or camera techniques. We don't even need dialogue. We just need one of the world's funniest performers to do what he does best, frantically cycling through reactions as the feeling of fear travels all over his body, like an itchy rash. When Mr. Bean goes to the swimming pool, Rowan shows us fear again, and rather than needing us to see the vertigo effect through a camera technique, he embodies it. His whole body wavers as his survival instincts kick in, so we see his knees bend for safety and he desperately reaches for the handrail. If you've ever been scared of heights in a public place, this is what you worry you look like. Trembling lips, wide eyes, and your whole body failing you and buckling as you desperately seek safety. We relate to these feelings of fear and embarrassment because we all experience them, but usually not as adults, but children.
I always imagine him as a 9-year-old boy. That's how I always see him.
For me, sometimes I see Mr. Bean's reactions with the same innocence and purity to how a dog might react. Like at the dentist when his gums go numb, or when a man has a heart attack at a bus stop, and his reaction feels like what happens when people pretend to die in front of their dog to test what they'll do. He's never playing it like an adult, he's just playing a raw, childish emotion. And that leads into our final key, the outsider. Usually Mr. Bean sketches involve placing the surreal character in a public setting, and watching him fail to mirror society's expectations of him. This is relatable because we have all, at some point, felt out of place, or that we just don't quite get basic things right. And there's something about Bean that feels as if he's discovering humanity's social norms for the first time, and quickly trying to adapt to them on the fly. Which again, connects with the viewer, as it mentally ties back to when we were kids, and learning the rules of this world. We'll often see Bean watch what other people are doing, and try to conform to the right way of doing things, or he mirrors our own weird behaviour back to us in clumsy fashion. Or when he's caught doing the wrong thing like a bold schoolboy, Rowan is the master of trying to look nonchalant, as if there's nothing to see here, I'm not doing anything wrong or out of place, even though his behaviour is so obvious to anyone watching. He embodies the childish ways we try to get away with things, attempting to make his facial features look innocent, while his body is doing the exact opposite of what his face is communicating. The key ingredient to Rowan's comedy is his willingness to embarrass himself. No matter the setting, most of us try to hold on to some semblance of dignity, that we can joke and be silly up to a point, or we can say funny things but still secretly try to come across as smart or attractive. But there's nothing flattering about this performance. However silly he needs to look to make you laugh is exactly how far he'll go. Some people just have a natural comedic gift. The way they do simple things is just funnier than when anyone else tries to do the exact same thing. Maybe it's just their facial features, or maybe they have better control over all of their limbs, but there's undeniably a certain magic to it. We often put performances up on a pedestal and declare them as iconic, as if that one actor was just born to play this one part, as the casting was too perfect. But with Bean, it's more than that. He can't be recast or replaced because the character himself is sort of indescribable, from his facial expressions to his run to even his voice.
Excuse me, I'm looking for my wallet.
Given he's been harnessing these skills since he was a teenager, you couldn't just hand a character description to another actor and expect them to pick up where he left off. It's an instinct that only makes sense when it's channeled through one man.
Which leads to my theory that actually that you have only one truly good and convincing visual comedy character within you. Nobody has more than one.
And even though Atkinson claims to not understand his own ability, situations like this remind me of the quote from Good Will Hunting, that when Beethoven looked at a piano, it just made sense to him. He could just play. And perhaps we should just be grateful that every once in a while, if we're lucky, we get to see a performer doing exactly what they were sent here to do. And just play. If you enjoy content like this and want to see more of it, please do consider supporting me on Patreon, as it really does make a difference to how much content I can pump out. Or if you can't afford that, then simply like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment down below to help the algorithm do its thing.